everybody wants to rule the world, the song goes. Well, no, actually every powerful control freak does. And so good people stand down and evil takes over, and that's the problem in history. And so the Milner Group wrote, and these are public documents. I've read them on Coast to Coast AM. I've posted them at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. They said in the 1920, at the end of World War I, they said, we're going to put incredible sanctions on Germany, bankrupt their old empire, even though it was the British royalty's cousins, and the Russian royalty were their cousins. They said, we're going to go overthrow Russia. They've just done that. There's stuff from 1910, 1914, 1918, but there's a bunch of documents. You can go read them. They're public. The minutes of the Milner Group, Lord Milner Roundtable Group. You know, it is a CFR here in the U.S., but this was the upper echelon of that. And we will then go and pick out of all these desperate groups over there. Well, they said, number one, as we squeeze and crush them, we're going to run the fake communist revolution in Russia so the people think it's going to be a workers' paradise. We'll kill the royal cousins there, take over so we can run all that. But then that'll be a big threat with the engine of Russia. So in the great game, as they call it, of balkanization, divide and conquer, we'll then play a fascist or right-wing movement off against Russia using the old empire. Because if we don't, the socialists and communists will take over Germany, and our own revolution will get too big for us, and we don't want all of Europe, Western Europe, falling. We just want Eastern Europe to have an extermination program. And so they created Hitler. The highest levels of British intelligence in control of German intelligence, this is on record, went and got the young army corporal as early as 1920. By the mid-1920s, they made him the leader of the Nazi Party. The royalty of Germany, including the Crown Prince, publicly financed him. The Crown publicly financed him. The Prince, who later became king for a short time from England, traveled and financed Hitler from the mid-20s. Hitler was given hundreds of millions of dollars in gold, weapon systems, even some smaller artillery, aircraft to fly around Germany. He was brought into power in 1933, and the whole time the Milner Group set him up, told him to invade Poland, told him to invade Czechoslovakia, told him to invade, and said this is going to be a greater world Germania. The king was publicly a Nazi at the time. He had to advocate. It wasn't over marrying that woman. This is all public record, hundreds of mainstream books, encyclopedia, you name it. The king heiling Hitler with Hitler and all the rest of it. They had the Netherlands go pro-Nazi, being led by Prince Bernhard, married to Queen Beatrix. Hitler was invited to invade at Dunkirk. The British all evacuated. That's why they stood the military down, and everyone noticed that, and it came out later that Hermann Goering said, bomb out past the ships, don't really bomb them, just make it look like we're bombing them. That came out. Remember that? The evacuation at Dunkirk? They only used the Luftwaffe to attack them. And that was all staged. This is all public, what you're hearing. I mean, I've literally read 50, 60, 70, 80, I don't know, more than that books on Nazi Germany and the war. I mean, the big encyclopedia ones. So, this is how they work. This is how they operate. This leads us up to today. And then Hitler, they turn against Hitler. He flips out. He starts saying, my God, they promised me this. I wasn't going to attack England. We were supposed to link up after I'd taken Europe and then knock out Stalin. And then we were going to carry out eugenics and exterminate the majority of the non-white population. That was the Hitler plan, if you didn't know. How they were going to put fluoride in the water to first pacify people, use them as slave labor, buy off their leaders, how the ops were going to work everywhere. There was a sick deal with the Rothschilds, funding him as well, that he would only let Jews escape. This is mainline books are being written by Jewish publications about this, that they would only let Jews go to Palestine. That's why they wouldn't let them go to New York or wouldn't let them go to London. And they had to pay $1 million to the Zionists to get out, so they'd loot them. Oh, yeah. Paul Hartman's out there with his mouth hanging open. It's mainline. I can show you. Have I not always shown you everything I say? I can show you right now, Hartman. There's like major university publications coming out with it right now, and everybody's flipping out. But this is old news. So all of that went on, Hitler blows everything up, attacks, invades. The French stand down. Over 80 to 90% of their military stands down. The entire leadership were Vichy French Nazis. That's why Hitler just patrolled, came and visited. Most of the German forces left until the Allies built up. Left France. The Vichy fascist French ran France. Those were done in secret deals. That had been hooked up also with their former royalty there. They were talking about bringing back the French royalty. That's what the Vichy wanted. And that was supposed to happen in the greater Germania. And the main global capitals were going to be London, Paris, and Berlin, with these giant capitals that you could fit, like, I forget, 35 U.S. Capitol domes in. Just giant cities they were going to build. Monorail, all this crazy stuff. They were going to go to the stars. They were going to build huge space stations. Hitler, you can see film footage of him with all these models of space stations, and Werner von Braun running around an Albert Sphere. Oh, it's just incredible. So, I mean, they had this big utopian moonraker world they were going to build after. I mean, I would be exterminated because I've got Native American in me. Only pure Nordic Germanics will be alive on the planet. And then Rothschild threw in, they made a deal where certain Jews are going to be allowed to live. I mean, that's just the plan. So, all of this was set up. And then Hitler starts panicking, going, "You've betrayed me. You said we were going to do a deal." They fly. Sometimes I have this moment. Who was Deputy Fuhrer? Rudolf Hess. Rudolf Hess is a fighter pilot from World War I hero. He jumps in a fighter bomber, flies into London, parachutes out over the Duke's house, lands at one of the royal palaces where the royals were actually at that time. They were on the radio, British intelligence, "Come here, have a meeting with us." They grab him, and he's there with all these Luciferian amulets. This is mainstream history. And he's there going, "You betrayed us. What's happened?" And they grab him, put him in the tower until he died many years later. They move him to London, the Tower of London. And then Hitler says, well, it doesn't matter if they betrayed us, and that's in his speeches on record. Doesn't matter if they set us up. We can't let the communists win. Launch Operation Barbarossa, sneak attack on the Russians. And so he turns towards the Russians and launches that and only uses about 10% of his force to defend against the invasion of the Allies at Dunkirk and Normandy and the rest of it. And he sends in the German forces. 10 million German troops died in that. 20 million Russians. The most hardcore fighting you can imagine. It dwarfs anything ever seen before or seen since. Just mass carnage and death. And so all of that unfolds. And they come into Europe. The globalist banks seize France, seize Germany. They set up NATO. They tried to kill de Gaulle in the 60s when he tried to throw out NATO. They wouldn't let the French have their own military. De Gaulle had to go out and say, "It's a takeover. I'm not allowing this." It was actually, people had to be physically thrown out. The British and U.S. forces out of France, so the globalists would still be there. They don't give up a country they've occupied. The OECD took over Japan, took over Germany, took over all those countries. Organization of Economic Cooperative Development, you know it as the Marshall Plan. Well, that was the private corporation they set up. So I'm driving into the office at 9 o'clock this morning. I'm listening to BBC. They've got an OECD on XM, an OECD individual from the UN on, admitting that the big global master banks, but they're saying this is good, are now going to take the money, the $2 trillion out of the Swiss bank alone, of the low-level people. There's tens of trillions in there. You notice the accounts they've been grabbing out of UBS are like people that have $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. They're just robbing the nouveau riche right now. Luxembourg has fallen. They're going after the Caymans, but selectively. Because remember, the big banks that have these are actually running the regulators. So they're just selectively going after. Austria's announcing they're going to turn over anybody the government says. Go into your calls in a moment, but I want to just finish up with this. Swiss bank secrecy pressured as Liechtenstein eases bank secrecy rules. Bloomberg. See, so now you have this global government where you'll all have cashless, cards that you buy and sell with, and even if you pay cash, they're going to swipe your card with a new sales tax they're now proposing because it's going to be graduated. And it's just total world government where you have a cashless ID card, got a thumbprint or face scan to identify and as the code key to use it. So stop identity theft. That's their, what they claim. And this will be total control, everything controlled by the bankers. This is it. Total, final world domination. And that's how slick they are. They produced Hitler like a movie script, like a film. Went out and went through all the hundreds of little disparate groups and built him up, created him, set him up, had the king come meet with him. We're going to do this. We need you to do it. You have the courage. Set him up, set it all up. Had the Bushes try to take over here and set up martial law. But the Marines, Smedley Butler they hired, the top Marine, Brigadier General refused, blew the whistle. So very complex things that happened here.